Hi folks, Marie here, and I'm here today in this video to talk about how to build containers to contain, literally, the mental clutter you carry around in your head. And this sort of concept has been something I'm thinking about a lot as I record this, I'm right in the middle of teaching the Organized Parent Workshop that I do once a year. And the focus of the Organized Parent system is always to clear out the mental clutter we hold in our head and free up our brain to actually do things and think about things, not just remember all the other stuff we have to deal with. And so in the Organized Parent, there are a couple tools that I share that help contain that mental clutter. But I was thinking about this, and on one hand, I share these tools, and you could just follow the strategies. And I'll name two strategies that you can also go to the Create Balance blog at createbalancedlife.com and read about both of these strategies. But what's more important than the strategy is how to think about what they're doing for you. How do we think about our mental clutter? And what is our brain space worth to us? So when I think about mental clutter, I'm thinking about things like, right now as I'm recording this, remembering to get pumpkins to carve because I'm recording this right around Halloween, remembering that I need to call a friend who's only in town for a little while and to make sure we make plans before she has to leave again. It's about remembering that I have a book to pick up at one library and a book to drop off at a different library. This is the stuff of life. Figuring out what we're going to have for dinner, making sure we have all the parts for the kids' lunches so that we don't, tomorrow morning realize that we're out of something that we really need to pack the lunch. That's the mental clutter we all carry around. And I'm always saying the goal of any system that's going to help you get organized has to start with making that mental clutter visible. But it can't stop there. You can't just make the mental clutter visible. You have to build some containers for it. And so I just want to share two containers that I use and why each of them is an effective container. Because the goal of a container is basically to take that mental clutter and hold it for you. It does and do two things. One is to be there when you need to access it. Think of it like an external hard drive that has a bunch of documents that you don't need most of the time, but when you need one of them, you really need them, you can just go to one place and find it. That's what these containers are for. It's to, all the stuff you have to remember day to day, like sending the check-in for Boy Scouts and having all the lunch items and all of that, having a container for them that when you have the mental space to be like, okay, what do I have to do next? You can just go to the container and find out. So for the containers, the first goal is to have them easily accessible and they hold the information so they're ready when you are. But here's the other important part of a container. A container keeps that mental clutter separate from the rest of your life. Because we don't really want the narratives of our lives to be figuring out what the heck to make for lunch tomorrow and where are we going to find pumpkins to carve. Those are part of our life, but they are not the dominant narrative in our lives. And when we build containers for mental clutter, we aren't just getting organized, we're also separating the mental clutter so that we can actually enjoy and be present for the other parts of our lives and create balance by focusing our energy on what matters most to us, not remembering all the little stuff of life. So containers function two ways. One is they hold the stuff you have to do in the mental clutter that you normally hold in your head. They hold it for you separate so that you can refer to it when you need to. And they create a barrier so that mental clutter doesn't just become all of your life or become the dominant narrative of your life. So with that in mind, I just want to share two types of containers. They're very different, but I think they both serve as this kind of container to keep the mental clutter accessible, but also separate from the rest of our lives. And so the first one is a tool from the Organized Parent, and that is the brain dump or the inbox. They're different strategies, but they serve the same purpose. And so, for example, a brain dump is literally where you just sit down, you write down everything that's in your head, and you dump it all out on a piece of paper. An inbox is similar in the sense that you have one location where any new information or new things you remember or new tasks you have to do, you write them in your inbox, and then you don't worry about it until you have a chance to go back and figure out what things you're going to do next. So think of the brain dump as sort of a sit down and dump everything out. The inbox is like an ongoing brain dump. But what's great about these two systems is when you've done the brain dump or the inbox, they're a container. And I will tell you, right now, today, as soon as I'm done with this video, what I'm going to be doing is going in through and sorting my brain dump. But last week at work, I had a whole bunch of stuff that was just cluttering my brain about tasks I wanted to do and ideas I had that I couldn't take action on, and I dumped it all out on a blue sheet of paper. And then this weekend, a bunch of new stuff came in that I have to do for some of the volunteer work I do and some of the groups I'm in and some of our household stuff, because this is a really busy week. And I wrote it all down on a white piece of paper. those two pieces of paper are now living off to the side. You can't see them, but they're off to the side right now. And I'm able to record this video and think about what I want to say in this video because all my mental clutter is contained in those pieces of paper. So they're both there for me. I'll be able to refer to them when I need them, but also they're separate from what I really want to focus my time and energy on right now. So the brain dump in the inbox is one form of container. The second form of container I want to share is batching, and I recently did a workshop about that. I have blog posts about it as well. Batching is just the idea that you take a task that you normally would spread out and do it less frequently. So meal prep, like prepping 3 meals on Sunday, would be an example, a very common example of batching. But a few things that I batch, meal prep, that's pretty much a habit for me now on Sundays. Grocery shopping, I try and go to, I go to lots of stores for grocery shopping, but I try and do them all at one time instead of driving every day going to a different store. And I also, as an educator and teacher, I try and batch my grading. So I do a lot of grading one day a week instead of spreading it out over every day. And I share all of this just to say that batching allows me to have a time container for when I'm going to do stuff so I don't stress about it the rest of the week. So I know that Thursdays are my grading day. I don't worry about grading papers on Wednesday because I know that the time to worry about it and the time to stress about it is Thursday. And when Thursday ends, I will deal with it next Thursday, whatever didn't get done. And similarly with meal prep, I do as much as I can on Sunday. Some Sundays I get all the meals for the week prepped. Some I only get 2, or I get some things chopped but not all of it done. But I just do what I can on Sunday. It always makes the rest of the week easier. And it's the container, right? I don't stress too much about meals during the week. I stress a little bit and do a lot of work for it on Sunday. And I know I can always go into Sunday. That's when I'm going to access all of the thinking and work around meal prep. But it also creates a barrier so that figuring out what we're going to have for dinner does not overwhelm me during the week. So this was just sort of a how to think about containers in your life, and specifically containers for mental clutter. How can you take all that mental clutter, all the noticing, remembering, and planning you do, and instead of letting it consume your life, build containers for it. Containers where you can access that information when you need to, and also containers that keep it separate from the rest of your life. Because creating balance is about spending the time and energy you have on what matters most. And in order to do that, we have to have the containers for all the little stuff that doesn't matter quite as much, but can very easily overwhelm our lives. Thank you so much for watching. Check out createbalancedlife.com. You can click the read button at the top of the page and find articles and blog posts about both of these strategies. And I really encourage you to check out the Create Balance Month planner. Basically, it takes you through the Create Balance process for a month. You can download that free on the website. Thanks so much for watching.